Hello, everybody, and welcome back into the Big Ten Show, USC edition. We've touched on Oregon, Washington, a few of the Pac-12 teams that are going to be joining the Big Ten in 2024, and it's USC's turn to get a shot at the Big Ten Show. So Mark was telling us that USC fans are excited to be in the Big Ten, and we're going to go through a little bit of that and go through the state of the football program, Lincoln Riley, how he's got the USC Trojans going as they come into 2024. So, Mark, how you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. We appreciate you coming on. Mark, do you want to tell the people where they can find you?
Yeah, so you can see right there, I do my show 5 times a week, LockedOn USC, part of the LockedOn Network. When I'm not doing my own podcast show, I'm also writing for WeAreSC.com, which is part of the On3 network. And we also do a weekly panel show there called Inside the Trojan Huddle. So I'm everywhere. You can find
Awesome. Me. Well, I appreciate you being here, Mark. And my co-host on the end, as always, Sonny Verma. Sonny, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing good. Mark, thank you for joining us. USC fans who are tuning in for the first time. Little goal for you guys. Our Oregon show was our highest rated show that we've produced yet. So you guys have a high bar to catch up to. So hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and let's get our brothers out west acclimated to Big Ten football.
Let's do this.
Let's do it. Sonny, go ahead.
Sure, Mark, let's just start there right off the bat. Starting next season, USC enters Big Ten football. The Pac-12 no longer exists, well, as it once was, I guess you can say. Maybe a little bit less about the football. Let me just ask you, as someone who's kind of covering USC, what are you kind of excited about? I'm sure you've had brethren in the industry who you're not going to be interacting with anymore. Other reporters from other teams who, again, you're going to disassociate yourself from. What are you most excited about now, entering the P2 era?
It's interesting you bring that up as far as my peer working group. I didn't even consider that. That wasn't even part of my thought process. This is strictly from a fan's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea, and I actually wrote about this, USC has pretty much owned the conference for the most part. There are there's been some valleys where other teams have had the advantage, but for the most part, it's been USC and the 11 Dwarfs. So it's always, who are we playing, and is it a marquee game? There haven't been very many marquee games that USC can say, hey, in the Pac-12. We've got UCLA, and then we've got, and that's the answer. There's always that dramatic pause. The newness of USC going into the Big Ten conference, the big conference, whatever we're going to call it now, is that every game feels like a marquee game. Now, I get it. USC playing Illinois or USC playing Rutgers, it might not have that marquee name to it, but to the USC fans, absolutely. They're now playing teams that they normally don't play frequently, unless it was in the Rose Bowl. Yeah. And, USC fans feel really confident about coming into the big conference because, you look at their history and their record versus teams from the big conference. USC's on the positive side of that.
Yep. Yeah. And I guess to piggyback on that, we've asked this question to a few of the other reporters as well. What's the overall feeling of, the differences that we hear about? And I talked about how the other day I thought on the Husker show that I do that I thought the weather is really overplayed in terms of people talking about coming over to play in the Big Ten cold and stuff like that. I think that's just extremely overplayed. It's something that we don't take into account when we have a high schooler coming from the state of Texas that's going to play in the Midwest. Why would we do it with a college player transitioning conference to conference? So that one aside, with just the pure play styles, do you think, because there seems to be the Big Ten thinks the Pac is going to have to adjust, the Pac thinks the Big Ten is going to have to adjust. Do you think one side's going to have to make more of adjustment than the other? And do you think one side has an advantage, or do you think it's kind of both just 50-50 at this point?
I think it's the chicken or the egg conversation here. Yeah. The Big Ten last season, we played great defense. Yeah. Okay, well, the outside perspective is, who plays offense in your conference? Are those numbers, are those stats padded because of?
Right.
So I just think back to this way: USC, Ohio State, even Nebraska. At one point, hopefully they can get back to that. When you have those blue blood programs, you're not recruiting for a specific style. You're recruiting for your program.
Yeah.
Look, it wasn't that long ago where USC had the type of players that can come into the shoe at night under the lights with 100,000 people and leave with a victory.
Yeah.
It's as long as USC is recruiting the type of players they need, it doesn't. I don't think I understand your question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it really comes down to who has the Jimmies and the Joes and who has the best X's and O's to go along with it.
And I think that's the best answer, because at this point it's all speculation, and I just don't think. I think it's one of those things that's like when you have a coach coming over and he has to turn a Big Ten team, or a coach coming over from the Pac-12 like Scott Frost, and he has to come over and try to turn a Big Ten team, and he's trying to turn it into like basically a Pac-12 team in the Big Ten. Right. I see a lot of people using that comparison, but I think that's just completely different, because it wasn't Oregon coming over when he was the OC there, that type of thing. So, speaking of defense, with the 2024 team, the defense struggled, last year. Do you think that the defense is going to make what's that?
You're being kind there.
Yeah. All right. I wasn't going to pull the stat out, but they were 34. 34.
The stat is USC's defense sucked last year.
That's 21st out of 133 qualified. I'm letting you say it, though. I'm not trying to make the people mad just yet. We got a whole season for that.
We appreciate the truth around here.
All right. So 121st out of 133, 34.4 points per game. Do you think that enough is going to be done this offseason to make a marketable jump in that, to where USC could potentially, because right now the general consensus is USC's, and this happened in one of our comment section, our power rankings, somebody said they're the biggest wild card. They could finish anywhere, they feel like, from like 3 to 9. Where do you feel that they fit in there? And do you think the defense has improved enough to where they can climb in kind of the top, echelon of that ranking, as opposed to more down in the 8-9 range?
So the first step was taken. They admitted they had a problem. The second step was, we know what the problem is.
Yep.
And Alex Grinch is no longer USC's defensive coordinator.
Correct.
They have brought in a completely new defensive staff. They kept one person around. That was Sean Nua, who, you might be familiar with. He was the defensive line coach at Michigan at one point under Jim Harbaugh. So they kept Nua. They brought in Danton Lynn, who turned UCLA's defense around in 1 year. They went from the crappy department to one of the best in the country last year. And we're hoping that he can have a similar effect at USC in 1 year. Not to the point where USC has a top 10 defense. USC doesn't need that when you score as many points as they're going to hopefully score.
Yeah.
This is what I've done for the last 2 years. I went from they need to have a serviceable defense to last year I wanted a respectable defense. Now they need to have a good defense.
Yeah.
Get off the field on third downs. Stop giving up 3rd and 12. Make the tackle. Have better, angle pursuits. It was those things. So can they make the jump? Can they get better? We're going to find out this spring. Lincoln Riley said after last season, defense is going to be priority number 1 with my program at USC going forward. Mm-hmm. He knows he can score points. He knows he's going to have a quarterback and wide receivers and running backs that want to come play for him. Yep. The trick is, can Lincoln Riley now become a complete coach? Does he appreciate defense? I think he was humbled last year.
Yeah. Yep.
I know USC fans were.
Yeah.
I mean, Lincoln Riley's now entering his 3rd year at USC. Started off 11-3 the first year, and last year, 8-5 is disappointing, not just for USC, but if you look at Lincoln Riley's track record, 8-5, you don't really see that happening in his career. What is the kind of the vibes that you guys get with Lincoln Riley? Are you guys still very committed and excited about the direction that he has you guys pointing in moving forward? Or are there now questions with, listen, if you had to, why didn't you get rid of this the defensive side of the coaching staff last year? Because I'll be honest, the Alex Grinch rumors were out there last year, the year before, talking about him not being up to USC's par. And, now that he's finally made the change, is there any questions about, is he a little late to make them?
So I think people need to really understand and keep the context. When Lincoln Riley took over the program at the end of the 2021 season, going into 2022, he inherited a dumpster fire. the recruiting had really dropped. I mean, when Coach Riley said, "Hey, you know what? I've got my iPad here, and I've got like 600 pages of notes," that was stuff that he had to fix. That wasn't like, "Oh, you know, I got 600 pages of good stuff." That was just, I got to fix this. And he had to hit the transfer portal really hard that first year, and he hit it again hard last year. And he's now at the point where he wants to transition, where he can now focus on that high school recruit development. So, and I know I'm kind of making a long story out of this, but when you have so many new players trying to come together and trying to learn a system that isn't, I'll call it, on the defensive side of the ball, player friendly. It puts you in situations where you have to be perfect, because if you're not perfect, you end up making mistakes. There was just so much lack of football going on and just more of thinking going on. That's where D'Anton Lynn comes in, a simplified defense. And he said, look, we're going to be really slow in the spring installing. We have to make sure we are fundamentally sound. So that's where we have to go. In 2022, USC had 11 wins, 3 losses. What got them to that finish line was the defense wasn't great, but they were opportunistic. They led the country in plus minus. They were constantly creating turnovers. Last year, that didn't happen. And all of a sudden now you've got what's bubbling to the surface is that lack of talent that you weren't able to develop in-house. You brought over for 1 year, and it's just not meshing together.
Yeah.
So that's where we're at now. Does Lincoln Riley understand his situation? I think was your question. I think he does. Again, you don't make wholesale changes across the board with your defensive staff if you don't know that you made a mistake.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We kind of pointed that out to him last year, but he needed that extra year of wanting to keep the staff together, consistency, to see if they can get them over the hump. He gambled. You know what happens when you gamble sometimes.
Lincoln Riley does seem to gamble a lot when it comes to quarterback, but he always comes out on top, seemingly his entire career. So let me just ask you now, obviously you're going to be going from, one of the best prospects of our generation in Caleb Williams to a completely new quarterback coming this year. Now, Miller Moss had a great bowl game, obviously, and so there's a lot of hoopla, and support surrounding him and whether he's going to be the quarterback moving forward. Tell me what you've heard about whether he's going to be the starter, just the quarterback room in general. Like, what does that room look like for the Trojans moving forward?
Well, look, everyone thought that Will Howard was going to be, transferring into USC to be the next quarterback, at least for the year. Lincoln Riley, he flew out there. He made an in-home. Well, Miller Moss, he is one of those under the radar. I'll call him underrated, even though he was a 4-star coming out of high school. This is a young man who was going to play at Mater Dei his senior year. COVID hit. He didn't play his senior year of high school. He early enrolled at USC. And then he's been playing behind Caleb Williams for these last couple of years. He's been patient. But he is so smart. I mean, Miller Moss is the type of kid you look at and you're like, that guy's probably going to be the president of the country one day. And he's already graduated. He's working on, I'm not sure if he has one master's, but he's working on his master's already. Very cerebral. But he has enough athleticism that he knows how to play the game. In other words, if you watch the Holiday Bowl, instead of where Caleb Williams will try and extend a play and keep it alive, Miller Moss is like, you know what? There's nothing there. And he's gonna ditch the ball at somebody's feet. Let's just play the next play. That's what made him so successful in the Holiday Bowl. And then all of a sudden you're saying, whoa, dude, this guy's throwing 6 touchdowns. Where was he? Why is he sitting on the bench? And why is Lincoln Riley even considering another quarterback? Yeah. Miller Moss's performance is why Will Howard is at Ohio State today. Miller Moss is a really good quarterback. But again, you had Caleb Williams transfer over. You got a Heisman winner in year 1. You're anticipating getting a similar performance in 2023. Didn't happen. I think Miller Moss is the perfect quarterback manager to help Lincoln Riley transition from that wide open, let's just throw it 100 times a game and ignore the running game sometimes, to, all right, hey, I got somebody who, play play action. Let's use the running backs. Let's use all these tight ends that we've been bringing in for these last 2 classes. I think you're going to see that difference this year in the offense.
So speaking of, Lincoln Riley and his staff, just a quick, I saw something earlier about the potential emergence of a running back coach in Tony Jones Jr., I believe. Have you heard anything about that, and where might they be in that process? Do you think there's something that they might be deep in that process? This could be getting done soon, and do you like that potential?
Yeah, no, I like the potential, and I know the source, and I know where the information's coming from.
Yep.
Again, I think we were the first ones to report that over there on wearesc.com.
Okay.
So absolutely, there is a lot of validity to it. My whole thought process on the running back coaching position is you want somebody there who knows how to teach fundamentals.
Yeah.
All security. It's not to me, and if they know how to recruit, even better. But it's not a high leverage coaching position. It's usually one of those stepping stone positions where you want to get to an offensive coordinator position, maybe even a head coach, whatever.
Yeah.
So I would prefer a younger coach.
Yep.
Somebody who still who enjoys recruiting, who can relate, but also, they have a resume of, look, these guys, 1,000 yards, 1,500 yards every year. And then when they graduate, the next freshman comes along, the next sophomore comes along, and they recreate the same type of production.
Yep.
Anthony Jones, the gentleman you're talking about from TCU, the bullet points on his resume, every running back he coaches ends up in the NFL.
Yeah.
So, we can have the fun banter, NFL factories, and we've all seen those videos.
Mm-hmm.
USC was always known as tailback U.
Yeah.
The last running back from USC to win a Heisman Trophy, despite what the NCAA says, was Reggie Bush.
That's a fraud. They need to give it back. They need to give that man his Heisman, man.
And it's going to happen. We're working on it, but
I think so.
USC needs to get back to that. Here is a great stat, and someone I work with, Eric McKinney, the last running back that USC recruited out of high school that actually finished their time at USC that didn't transfer out. I guarantee you guys don't know the name.
Probably don't.
Vavai Malapai.
I would have never guessed that.
Yeah, 2016.
Oh.
Since then, you've had, Ray Brown transferred out last year. Darwin Barlow, well, he was a transfer. They've had every running back that they've recruited. Stephen Carr, who ended up at Indiana, was a 5-star. It's been really bizarre to see the way the game has been transitioned, how USC became more pass happy than running the ball. I need them to come back and be more balanced.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the perfect. I mean, in the Big Ten, I think there has to be a level of balance. But the biggest thing is just having Lincoln Riley as the offensive mind. Anybody who comes on board is going to get experience of the offensive systems to, a degree that they've never seen before. And like you said, just having a young coach to be able to come in and learn under the tutelage of Lincoln Riley, and you never know, potentially have a future as a coach there. You never know if it's going to be an internal that Lincoln Riley wants to progress that. Just overall in the landscape of the Big Ten, and looking at your schedule next year, who do you think might give USC the biggest troubles with the team currently as constructed? And what are some of the things that, besides defense, that you think will be improved this offseason that they've addressed via the transfer portal, recruiting, et cetera?
So on to your first, as far as the schedule, it's a pretty tough schedule. There's no doubt about it. But if you look at it, you got LSU to kick off the season in Las Vegas. USC and LSU are mirrors of each other.
Yes.
They're both replacing their Heisman winning quarterback. Both quarterbacks that played in the bowl game had a really good game.
Yep.
They're both replacing defensive staffs. And both programs have had a lot of players leave, whether transfer or to the NFL draft.
Correct.
So as far as, people say, oh, LSU is going to, run away with it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Why do you say that? Look, if we really want to peel back the layers and look at it, these teams are pretty evenly matched right now. And again, the game's in Las Vegas, so nobody really has a true home field advantage.
Right.
The first game, and I actually did a show saying, which game was more important, the LSU game or that first game in Ann Arbor, because you want to set the tone. Hey, USC, we're here. We can handle the big conference.
Yeah.
I look at Michigan, and I say, well, you know what? They're going through a pretty big transition this offseason.
Yep.
How tough is that first away game in September in Auburn, in Ann Arbor, going to be?
Yeah.
Because you got a coaching staff. I don't even know what their roster is going to look like once that spring transfer portal window opens up and leaves.
Yep.
Again, go ahead.
No, I'm just going to say it's over there. The Michigan might be the hardest team to project for next year outside of Washington.
Right. Exactly. And so then you look at the rest of the schedule and you say, all right, well, you got Wisconsin, you got Penn State in LA. Look, there's a reason why James Franklin and Penn State haven't gotten over the hump in the big conference.
Yeah.
I don't know if them coming to LA is supposed to scare USC. Now, I'm not saying that USC is going to run through this like, a hot knife through butter.
Right.
What I'm saying is we like to make things more challenging than they should be. But then when, again, you start peeling back the layers and really looking at things, you're like, all right, that game could be challenging, but it's nothing that they can't overcome.
Yep. Yeah, I kind of see that. Penn State to me is like the team that's, in the top 10 that really nobody's afraid of, but like there's the potential that they could get over that hump. It's like they have them constantly ranked in a position where they expect them to get over the hump, but they just can't quite can't. And they never instill fear in you like the Ohio States of the world or the Michigans of last year, but they're still right up there in the ranking. So yeah, Penn State is one of those teams that they're very weird to me, and they're hard to project just based on that, because Franklin's a good coach, but what's holding them back?
Well, I go back to the Rose Bowl game that USC and Penn State played back in 2017. You've got Saquon Barkley that's just doing whatever the hell he wants on the field, and then all of a sudden at the end of the game, James Franklin's throwing the ball deep downfield, challenging the secondary. What happened in that game? It's like, I don't know, coaches. And I'm not just picking on Coach Franklin, but coaches, sometimes they have these brain farts. They try and get ahead of themselves. And it makes no sense to me. Lincoln Riley does it. Norm Chow did it when he was the offensive coordinator at USC. It's just bizarre to me.
I think a lot of these coaches just try to go like they overthink it with the analytics. And I'm an analytical guy, but I think there's sometimes where you just got to go with what they're giving you, So I really think, I know, surprise. You just got to go with what they're giving you. And that's what the good coaches do. Take what the defense gives you. Like if they're giving you the run game, run down their throats, especially if you're a Big Ten team, that's your bread and butter.
Perfect example. Last year, USC hosted Utah. Yeah. And USC, people say USC they don't know how to be physical. They can't run the ball. In the first quarter, when the first quarter ended, USC had 100 yards rushing on Utah. They were doing whatever they wanted.
Yeah.
In the second quarter, they did not. I think they tried one running attempt.
That's crazy. It
made no sense.
I was taking a peek at that schedule, and you guys, unlike Oregon, don't really have that welcome to the Big Ten game late in October or November, like in a cold weather city like that. So you guys are kind of, as you kind of mentioned, the schedule isn't too bad. Obviously, if you make the Big Ten championship, sure, but that's in the dome, so you'd be okay there. So you're spending a lot of time out in California in October and November, and that's going to be definitely in your favor.
Yeah, you guys raised the weather element earlier in the show, and I actually think USC has the advantage here because I don't know about the Big Ten. I know it gets humid in Illinois and other parts of the country during the summer, but USC literally can play in 115-degree weather one day. Yep. And 2 weeks later, because that's how the Pacific Northwest is, you could be playing in freezing sleet type of rain.
Yeah.
I mean, you really do have all the different weather elements. Don't forget you had Colorado, you had Utah who came in the last 10, 15 years, whatever.
Yep.
So, this isn't anything new.
Exactly.
And as you point out, USC, once they're done with Maryland, they're done with their East Coast swing.
That's great.
Their furthest trip is up to Washington in November, and they've done that before.
That's wild considering Maryland's October 19th. That's
right.
Sometimes
USC plays Notre Dame on the even year number. Odd numbered years.
Yeah, that could end up being a very intriguing game. That Notre Dame game there.
And a potential future conference game.
Yeah, exactly.
Who knows?
Yeah,
They might send USC out to play Purdue and Lafayette one year in November. Who knows?
So I guess, you know, Sonny, do you have any more questions before I wrap up with my final question?
Yeah, Mark, usually our final questions are just kind of little, could be off topic, don't need to be off topic. But yeah. I live right outside Chicago. And I know this is going to be a little ironic with me wearing a Justin Fields hoodie as I ask this question. You know, the Chicago Bears have the #1 draft pick in the upcoming draft. And, you know, all the eyes of the NFL are on our organization. And basically what I've been gathering and hearing now is it very much looks like Caleb Williams is going to be the #1 pick for the Bears. Okay. Can you give me maybe a little scouting report from what you've seen on what kind of things I guess you can say can have to look forward to, and what kind of flaws he's still going to have to work on once he's under center in the NFL?
So Caleb Williams, when you watch him play, he's one of those generational talents. He really is a type. There's so much competitive spirit in him that he will take a play to the final second, and he'll take a hit if he thinks he can have the big play down the field. But that might play to his detriment in the NFL. Look, college and the NFL, big different game here. Caleb he can throw from every arm angle. He's got great pocket awareness, so he can literally move the pocket before the pressure gets to him. He'll feel it. He'll see it. And again, his ability to escape that pressure and pick up yards when there's nothing to throw downfield, he can do that for you. But again, he needs to be able to process that information quicker now. I think he took advantage of what he was able to do in college. I don't know if he's going to be able to do that at the next level. So for me, it's how fast can you process through your progressions? You know, he likes to go big play, intermediate, short. That doesn't work in the NFL.
Yeah.
So again, how does he make that jump?
Yeah, for sure. And I guess to wrap a bow on all this, you know, looking at, you know, the future of USC and where, you know, that's headed, as you said, it's heading in a great direction under Lincoln Riley. You know, what do you see for this USC team in the next, you know, 3 to 5 years? Do you think they're competing for a Big Ten title? Do you think they're, you know, sneaking in the playoffs? You know, do you think they're working their way up to a bye in the playoffs? Where do you think this team is? Well, the playoffs going to change a million times before we even get to the first one. So as the current playoff is structured, you know, what do you see this Trojans team doing?
Look, if Danton Lynn and the defense can make and I'm going to say significant improvement, because last year they were so bad. If they can make a significant improvement just to get into that 50 range where they're ranked 50th in the nation as a defensive unit. Yep. And you've got Lincoln Riley's offense. That puts you, I think, in the playoff stratosphere, especially in the big conference, because, and I've commented about this, I think the norm, you're going to have 2-loss teams on the regular making the playoffs. Yeah. The big conference, the SEC, strength of schedule is going to play a bigger role. So who you lose to now does matter. Yep. Who you beat doesn't. In other words, when you see the Alabamas and the Georgias lining up, you know, the Appalachians and the Citadels in the week leading up to their rivalry game, you know, just because you're beating them by 30 points and getting that extra win in the column, I'm thinking if I'm on that playoff committee, well, you know what? USC, they lost by 4 to Stanford in an out-of-conference game who's in the ACC now. Yeah. To me, I think that means a little bit more.
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah, is USC going to make the playoffs this year? I don't think many people are picking them. Do they have an opportunity to get into that? Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Because, again, 12 teams, the Big and the SEC are going to dominate the at-large bids.
For sure.
So 10 wins, that can get you in.
Yeah, it's weird. We come from a day and age of college football where it one loss and it felt like your season was over. And now we're talking about 2 wins getting you in the playoffs. It's crazy.
You can lose the conference championship game and not be concerned that you're not going to make the playoffs.
Yeah. Look at Ohio State last year. Like, won every game up until, you know, the end, and then just got you know, and I felt that they were one of the 4 best teams.
See, we could probably have a lot of discussions about
yeah.
teams that should have been and haven't been, and I think USC is going to have a really strong argument going back years.
I will say though, kind of your point talking about the Blue Bloods in the beginning of the show, you know, I'm from Texas.
Okay.
My dad and family's born and raised in Nebraska, so I hate Texas with a passion, the Longhorns. But even I agree that, like, when the Texases, the USCs of the world, you know, those Blue Bloods, and again, in my opinion, Blue Bloods don't change. Blue Bloods are a historical term for royalty, and, you know, in certain lineages, and that means the foundation, the fabric of college football were those teams, and those teams don't change. So when those teams are good, absolutely, I just think the sport as a whole is better, and USC is got that, and they always will have that. So I think that's always going to help them.
One of my favorite road trips ever was when USC visited Lincoln, Nebraska.
Yep.
I was, first of all, salt of the earth people. I didn't have to go into my pocket one time.
Yeah.
It was just like, hey, you thirsty? Get that guy a drink. You hungry? Whatever. It was just awesome. But the passion of that fan base, the standing ovations that they give, I mean, it's just,
appreciate that. Yeah. For sure. Yeah. It's a good vibe. I tell people all the time, if you go out to a game out there, it's good vibes. Like, you're opposing fan, we're going to welcome you in, play your fight song on the stage, bright you on, all that stuff. So, So, all right, Sonny, anything else before we close?
No, Mark, I know you're a super busy guy, so, you know, I really do appreciate you taking some time to come on our show, and hopefully this is not going to be the last time we see you.
Yep. I hope not. I've enjoyed it. Let's do this again soon.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again, Mark. And one last
rivalry banter.
Yes, sir. One last time, do you want to tell the people where they can find you?
Yeah. Every 5 times a week, Monday through Friday, LockedOn USC, part of the LockedOn Network. And then if you want to go check out some cool VIP subscription stuff, wearesc.com over there on 3.
Awesome. So links will be in the description to all of Mark's work. So y'all be sure to go down there and click those links and go support him. And, you know, thank him for his time joining us here. And we'll definitely have him back on. So that'll do it for us here. Again, if you like our content, please consider liking and subscribing, and we will see you on the next episode. Peace.